In the quiet darkness of the Egyptian desert, the night wind blows through the silent cliffs of Luxor. Here, sandstone temples nestle in the moonlight, as if holding stories that have never been told. If you listen closely, you will hear the whisper of history, a soft call echoing from 1,000 years ago. It is the story of a woman, a different woman. She is not just a queen, not just a mother, not just a person who holds the throne while waiting for her son to grow up. She is the Pharaoh, the only king of Egypt. She wears a man's robe, wearing the double crown that represents Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. On her chin, a fake golden beard, meticulously crafted to resemble the image of Osiris, the god of life and death. She sat on the throne like any other male pharaoh, looked straight at her courtiers, and declared, "From now on, I am not just a queen. I am the Pharaoh." Her name was Hatshepsut, and for nearly 20 years, she ruled one of the most brilliant civilizations of mankind. But the strange thing is, after her death, her name was erased from the stone tablets. Her statues were destroyed. Her portraits were blurred. It seemed like there was a huge conspiracy to make the world forget that there had ever been a female pharaoh. So why did Hatshepsut choose to dress like a man to rule? And why was she later erased from history? Part 1. Egypt, the land of pharaohs and patriarchal rule. Ancient Egypt was not just a collection of rituals and solid stone structures. It was a visual language system where every detail of clothing, every icon on a stele spoke of power. In this context, the concept of pharaoh goes far beyond the meaning of an ordinary ruler. The pharaoh was the embodiment of the gods on earth, the one who connected the human world with Horus, with Ra, with the supernatural powers that the people worshipped. When we understand that the throne in Egypt was a sacred position rather than a personal title, we see why the forms of expression of the crown, the scepter, and especially the false beard were so important. These decorations were not mere accessories. They were a language to declare, whoever wears this is the pharaoh. And in a society where that symbol was already considered masculine, for a woman to take on that entire language was both an act of exaggeration and a declaration of war against common sense. So when Hatshepsut chose to dress as a man, wearing a double crown and a false beard, it was not a clumsy disguise to trick her courtiers. It was a deliberate strategy in the political art of the time. The act exploited a fundamental paradox. If power is confirmed by symbols, then whoever possesses those symbols will be recognized as having power. She did not simply borrow clothing to conceal her gender. She performed the very function of a king, taking advantage of the symbolic language that was already ingrained in the social consciousness to assert her legitimacy. And so many inscriptions, statues, and reliefs from Hatshepsut's reign show her in a masculine form, a male body, the gestures and postures of a king, but a face that sometimes retains a gentle feminine quality. This mix creates a deliberate visual discourse that both asserts and avoids certain reactions that might arise. But such visual language also carries risks. For as soon as a woman uses a symbol system that is traditionally male, she not only challenges precedent, but also touches on subtle power structures. The priesthood, the nobility, and the interest groups within the court. Those who hold actual power, who decide on rituals, distribute land, and coordinate religious support, may accept a temporary regency to stabilize the government. But a female pharaoh, if she survives and is successful, risks upsetting the established order. The visual power that Hatshepsut wielded was thus a double-edged sword. It gave her the ability to legitimize her power in the eyes of the public and the priesthood, but it also provided evidence for those who were dissatisfied to accuse her of violating the sacred order, a charge that was both political and gender-inflected. From a skeptical perspective, one might ask, did Hatshepsut really want to become male in the biological sense? Or was she playing a political role where gender was merely a prop? The answer is not necessarily black and white. There is both a pragmatic and an ideological element here. The transformation into a male figure does not suggest a defeminization, but rather a transformation of the self into a genderless symbol of power, a public entity that transcends the individual. But it was precisely this transformation that made it easy for posterity, especially those who came to power after her, to label her as a violation of order, and to launch a campaign to erase her name, smash statues, and erase records. An act that was both a reclamation of power and an attempt to restore a normal narrative of kingship in which masculinity was re-established as the norm. Ultimately, Hatshepsut's act of dressing as a man left a dramatic paradox. She used symbolic language to achieve and maintain power, demonstrating that power could be performed and recognized through images. But that very success made her the target of an effort to erase history, as if the power a woman had achieved had to be paid for by being erased from official memory. The false beard, crown, and cloak are thus not just archaeological material. They are visual evidence that power is a behind-the-scenes drama, and that Hatshepsut was the brave or suspected female director of that drama. Now let's begin. Part 3. Hatshepsut's life and work. Hatshepsut entered history as a living paradox. A woman who ruled in a civilization where the throne was traditionally considered the exclusive property of men. To understand her journey, we need to look at each step of her life, from her birth, to her marriage, to her role as regent, and finally her historic breakthrough to become Pharaoh. 1. Royal birth. Born to power, but not to rule. Hatshepsut was the legitimate daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and Queen Ahmose. This made her one of the few princesses of pure blood, recognized by the entire court. In theory, she was closer to the throne than anyone else. But ironically, in Egyptian society, although women may have been respected, the throne was never theirs. Hatshepsut was born with everything she needed to rule, except for one thing. She was not a man. 2. Marriage to Thutmose II, legitimizing power for someone else. When Thutmose I died, the throne did not pass to Hatshepsut, but to Thutmose II, the son of the pharaoh with a concubine. To strengthen the legitimacy of that peripheral king, the court was forced to arrange a marriage with Hatshepsut. So, instead of ruling, she became the queen, the one who made her husband's throne more legitimate. But the paradox lies in the fact that Thutmose II was weak, sickly, and had a short reign. Meanwhile, Hatshepsut proved herself to be sharp-minded and understood the workings of politics. She, not her husband, was the one who truly knew how to wield power. 3. The regency, the makeshift throne. Thutmose I's early death brought the throne to a child, Thutmose III, his son by a low-ranking concubine. As was customary in Egyptian history, Queen Hatshepsut became regent, running the country in the child's name. This was not uncommon in Egyptian history, as women had often taken over when kings were young. At first, Hatshepsut's role made sense. She appeared next to the child Pharaoh, playing the role of protector. But there was a gap between protector and throneholder, and Hatshepsut began to bridge that gap. In early inscriptions, she humbly stood next to the young king. A few years later, the language changed. Hatshepsut called herself Supreme Queen of Upper and Lower Egypt. She was no longer just regent. She assumed the role of king. 4. The unthinkable turn, from regent to pharaoh. In Egypt, women could do many things. They could own land, be priests, run estates, and even act as regents. In other words, women could do almost everything. But there was one forbidden zone, the title of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was not only the king, but also the son of Ra, the incarnation of Horus, a male god. Therefore, it was almost unthinkable for a woman to dare to call herself Pharaoh. And Hatshepsut did that unthinkable. Step by step, she transformed her presence from assistant to center. Reliefs and monuments began to depict her in a male form, wearing a loincloth, a double crown, and a fake beard. At the same time, the faces in many statues still retained the soft features of a woman, a combination that was both strange and challenging. The message behind these images was clear. I don't need to be a man to be Pharaoh. I wear what makes me Pharaoh. This was not a disguise, but a deliberate visual strategy. She did not try to hide her true gender. On the contrary, she exploited it to assert that she was above all boundaries. 5. The reaction of the court, both acceptance and suspicion. In the short term, the strategy was successful. The priesthood, especially at the Temple of Amun, supported her because she generously funded religious ceremonies and construction. The high officials also sided with her because she brought stability and continued economic expansion. But behind the imposing statues, suspicion remained. For many male nobles, a woman wearing a false beard to call herself Pharaoh was contrary to the cosmic order. They may have supported her in the short term, but in the heart of her, she was never fully accepted. And it was Hatshepsut's success. The more she built temples, the more she expanded her trade, the more she asserted her position, it made her a threat to Thutmose III, her rightful heir. After successfully navigating the tricky waters of ancient Egyptian politics, Hatshepsut's reign marked a golden age for Egypt. Her ambitious building projects left an indelible mark on the landscape, with the most iconic being her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. Carved into the hillside, this temple was not just a burial site, but a testament to her legacy. Inside its chambers, intricate reliefs and hieroglyphics narrate the tales of her glorious deeds, ensuring that her name would be forever etched in the annals of history. The turning point in Hatshepsut's story came when she embarked on a daring expedition to the land of Punt, a mysterious realm believed to be located in modern-day Somalia or Ethiopia. The purpose of this voyage was to acquire precious incense, myrrh, and gold, commodities highly sought after in ancient Egypt. The journey was fraught with challenges, traversing uncharted waters and battling the wrath of the sea. But Hatshepsut's determination and strategic brilliance saw her fleet safely return laden with the treasures of Punt, a triumph that solidified her status as a great pharaoh. However, amidst all the grandeur and glory, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Hatshepsut's stepson, Thutmose III, harboring resentment over his mother's usurpation of the throne, plotted to seize power. With the support of the military and influential advisors, he launched a coup, deposing Hatshepsut and assuming the role of pharaoh. Hatshepsut's reign came to an abrupt end, and she was erased from official records, with many of her monuments defaced or destroyed. Despite the tragic turn of events, Hatshepsut's legacy endured. Her contributions to Egypt's cultural and economic prosperity continued to resonate, and her image was revered for centuries. It was until the 20th century that her story began to be rediscovered with the unearthing of her magnificent temple at Deir el-Bahari. As archaeologists uncovered more about her reign, the world marveled at the achievements of this extraordinary woman. In the tapestry of ancient Egyptian history, Hatshepsut's story stands out as a beacon of courage, ambition, and resilience. Her rise to power, her monumental achievements, and her ultimate demise serve as a reminder of the complexities of human ambition and the relentless march of time. So here's the question for today. What can we learn from Hatshepsut's story? How does her journey inspire you? Your thoughts matter, so drop them in the comments below. Let's discuss. Also, if you liked this episode, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more. We've got plenty of fascinating stories from history's past that are just waiting to be discovered. The Egyptian queen that dressed like a man, Hatshepsut, one of the most mysterious figures in ancient Egypt. You might have noticed that Egyptian queens seem to always appear in movies dressed in long dresses, delicate jewelry, and perhaps holding a cat. This image is deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness. But what if I told you that's not how queens in ancient Egypt actually looked? If you've ever visited the Cairo Museum, chances are you've come across a statue of a strong, imposing figure wearing a short loincloth and a fake beard. This is Queen Hatshepsut, but the story doesn't end there. Hatshepsut wasn't just any queen. She was the first woman to hold the title of Pharaoh, and her attire tells a story of breaking barriers and challenging societal norms. While the image of the strong female ruler persists in our imaginations today, Hatshepsut's path to power was fraught with challenges. Despite being the daughter of the pharaoh, she was initially destined for a different role, the wife of her half-brother. However, fate had other plans. The death of her husband propelled her into the role of regent for her stepson, a position she used to steadily increase her own power until she declared herself pharaoh in the 15th century BC. You might be thinking, if Hatshepsut was already a powerful ruler, why did she feel the need to dress as a man? The answer lies in the context of her rule. Ancient Egypt was a patriarchal society, and the pharaoh was considered the embodiment of the male deity Horus. This meant that the title of pharaoh was typically reserved for men. For Hatshepsut, adhering to traditional gender roles could have limited her authority. Dressing as a man allowed her to align herself with the divine kingship and project an image of absolute power. But Hatshepsut's choices went beyond simply adopting male attire. Her appearance was carefully crafted. She wore a long, tight skirt that accentuated her figure, a fitted jacket with broad lapels, a large belt, and a headdress that emphasized her feminine features. Her outfits were not just symbolic, they were a visual declaration of her power. Each element of her wardrobe was chosen to communicate a message to her subjects and to the world. Her choice of clothing had a profound impact on how she was perceived. Hatshepsut's subjects saw her as a true pharaoh, not as a woman pretending to be a man. This perception was reinforced by her use of masculine language and imagery in official texts and artwork. By presenting herself as a male ruler, Hatshepsut broke down gender barriers and paved the way for future generations of powerful women. But why do you think Hatshepsut chose to dress as a man? Was it a strategic move to gain power or a personal preference? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Now let us take a closer look at the intricate details of her attire and what they reveal about her character and the society she lived in. Hatshepsut's outfits weren't just symbolic, they were a reflection of her personality and power. Her trademark look included a long, tight skirt, a fitted jacket with broad lapels, a large belt, and a headdress that emphasized her feminine features. Her clothing choices were not only a means of asserting her authority, but also a way of expressing her individuality. In addition to her clothing, Hatshepsut also wore traditional Egyptian accessories, such as the headdress, which was often adorned with the cobra symbol of the goddess Uraeus. This headdress served not only as a symbol of royalty, but also as a protective amulet. Hatshepsut's use of traditional symbols and iconography was a way of connecting with her subjects and legitimizing her rule. The materials used in her garments also played a significant role. Hatshepsut's clothing was made from fine linen, a material associated with wealth and power. The quality of her garments was a reflection of her status as pharaoh and a symbol of the prosperity of her kingdom. The choice of fabric not only conveyed luxury, but also communicated a sense of continuity with previous royal traditions. The colors worn by Hatshepsut also held deep meaning. She often chose to wear shades of blue and green, colors associated with nature, fertility, and the divine. These colors were not only visually appealing, but also served to connect Hatshepsut with the natural world and the gods. Her choice of color palette was a way of communicating her values and aspirations to her subjects. It's important to note that Hatshepsut's clothing was not static, but evolved over time. As her reign progressed, her garments became more elaborate and her style more refined. This evolution mirrored the growth of her kingdom and the increasing sophistication of her court. Her changing wardrobe was a reflection of the dynamic nature of her rule and the evolving tastes of her era. Hatshepsut's clothing choices were not only influenced by her gender and status, but also by the artistic conventions of her time. Egyptian art had its own distinct style and conventions that influenced how Hatshepsut was depicted in sculpture, painting, and other art forms. Artists often portrayed her with exaggerated features and proportions, emphasizing her divine status and power. For example, Hatshepsut was often shown with almond-shaped eyes, a narrow waist, and a triangular face, all characteristics associated with beauty in Egyptian art. These artistic conventions not only shaped how Hatshepsut was visually represented, but also influenced how she saw herself and wanted to be seen by her subjects. The art of her era played a crucial role in shaping her public image and solidifying her legacy as a powerful female ruler. As we delve deeper into Hatshepsut's story, it is essential to consider the broader context of her reign and the challenges she faced as a woman in a patriarchal society. Hatshepsut's decision to present herself as a male ruler was not just a personal choice, but a strategic move to navigate the complexities of Egyptian politics and customs. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was considered the embodiment of Horus, the sky god, and the title pharaoh was typically reserved for men. This gendered title created a significant barrier for Hatshepsut as a female ruler. However, she didn't shy away from the challenge. Instead, she embraced the symbolism of maleness and presented herself as a male pharaoh. By doing so, Hatshepsut aligned herself with the divine kingship and projected an image of absolute power. She wasn't content with being seen as a mere regent or a queen. She wanted to be recognized as the supreme leader of Egypt. Her decision to dress as a man was a bold statement that challenged societal norms and expectations. Hatshepsut's choice of attire wasn't arbitrary. It was a carefully crafted image that communicated her authority and legitimacy. By wearing traditional male clothing, she identified herself with the pharaonic tradition and asserted her right to rule. Her decision to dress as a man was a testament to her confidence and determination. She wasn't afraid to break away from tradition and forge her own path. In doing so, she set an example for future generations of women leaders and proved that gender norms were not absolute. Hatshepsut's impact went beyond her own reign. She inspired other women to pursue positions of power and challenge the status quo. Her legacy as a trailblazer for women's rights cannot be overstated. As we continue to explore the fascinating world of ancient Egypt, it's important to remember the contributions and achievements of women like Hatshepsut. Their stories remind us that gender norms are not immutable, and that women have always been capable of breaking barriers and achieving greatness. Part 4. Achievements in the reign of Hatshepsut, when the female pharaoh left a timeless mark. So come along with me on a journey back in time where I'll reveal the incredible story of Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who dared to challenge the patriarchal norms of ancient Egyptian society. Her reign was marked by unprecedented prosperity, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire awe and wonder. Before we begin, make sure to hit the subscribe button to never miss an exciting episode. Let's dive into the fascinating world of ancient Egypt and uncover the secrets of Hatshepsut's remarkable life and achievements. When we only look at the image of a woman protecting her health to consolidate her power, we can easily label Hatshepsut as fake or dramatic. But the paradox lies in the fact that when we remove that layer of power drama, her real artifacts during her 20-plus year reign made even the most masculine pharaohs bow their heads. So what did Hatshepsut really do to leave her name in history? In today's video, I will highlight 5 great works of Hatshepsut that left even the most masculine pharaohs in awe. Make sure to stick around until the end, because these will surprise you. Now let's jump into the first point, the prosperous economy and the launch of trade. Hatshepsut's reign is not remembered for bloody battles, but for unprecedented wealth. She understood clearly. War can bring glory, but trade brings solid prosperity. Hatshepsut laid down her weapons and set sail across the sea to distant lands. Her ships braved the waves, not to plunder and conquer, but to bring home treasures of gold, incense, and ebony. These were not just goods. They were the seeds of her prosperous economy. Building on this trade network, she lowered taxes, making life easier for farmers and merchants. They in turn filled the royal coffers, leading to Egypt's golden age. With money flowing in, she embarked on ambitious building projects, beautifying temples and creating jobs. Her reign wasn't about might. It was about making life better for her people. She showed them that a pharaoh could be both powerful and kind. And how did she ensure that prosperity continued after her? By planning ahead. She trained officials to manage the kingdom wisely and passed laws to protect the weak. Even after her death, the memory of her benevolent rule kept Egypt thriving. The next point is her great work, the Temple of Deir el-Bahari. If I had to choose a product to quickly go to Hatshepsut, it would definitely be the Deir el-Bahari ladder. Imagine standing before it. The wind whispers stories of ancient Egypt as you climb the mountainside. It's not just a stairway. It's a journey through time. What makes this place so special, you might ask? Well, it's not only about the stunning view or the intricate carvings. No, it's about what this place symbolizes. When Hatshepsut became pharaoh, some didn't think she could handle the job, especially because she was a woman. But she proved them wrong in style, starting with this temple. Carved into a hillside, it's a masterpiece of design, blending perfectly with nature. It's like the mountain itself welcomed her as the rightful ruler of Egypt. But she didn't stop there. Every step, every pillar, and every statue tells the story of her accomplishments. From trading expeditions to building projects, they're all immortalized here, reminding visitors of her greatness. And now for point 3, her governance policy and internal stability. Picture this. You're living in ancient Egypt, and your pharaoh keeps winning battles. But that doesn't bring lasting peace. So you sigh, dreaming of a ruler who values wisdom over warfare. Enter Hatshepsut, the pharaoh who listened to the people's silent wishes. She took the reins of the kingdom, not with an iron fist, but with fairness and care. Like a gardener tending to precious plants, she nurtured her kingdom. Wars were costly and upsetting. So instead, she focused on governing well. She kept taxes low, so farmers had more money in their pockets. She appointed trustworthy officials, ensuring justice and order throughout the land. And as the kingdom flourished, so did the people. Craftsmen created exquisite works of art, while merchants sailed to distant lands, bringing back treasures and stories. During her reign, Egypt enjoyed a rare internal stability, allowing it to flourish without the shadow of war. Her pharaoh, wise and compassionate, made it possible. Hatshepsut ruled with grace and wisdom, offering a much-needed respite from the endless cycles of conflict. Okay, halfway through our video, and I bet you're eager to hear more about Hatshepsut's remarkable journey. But before we move on, we have a question for you. Which aspect of Hatshepsut's story has intrigued you the most so far? Perhaps her rise to power, her successful trade expeditions, or her efforts to promote peace and prosperity within Egypt? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and let us know what has captured your imagination. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's delve deeper into Hatshepsut's legacy and explore the next point in her extraordinary tale. Point 4. Her foreign position and applied diplomacy. Now let's talk about her foreign policy. You might think of pharaohs as fierce warriors, always ready for battle, but Hatshepsut was different. She understood that true strength comes not from weapons, but from connections. Instead of sending armies to other lands, she sent gifts. This way of connecting with other rulers was a big deal back then. It showed that she wasn't just powerful, but also smart and fair. Other rulers, including the mighty king of Kush, got the message. They returned the favor with gifts and promises of friendship. This meant safer borders for Hatshepsut. The countries around Egypt didn't feel threatened by her, so they didn't start wars. This approach to ruling made Egypt a hub of trade and cultural exchange. People from different lands felt safe to visit and do business there. Hatshepsut's legacy is not just about grand buildings and treasures. It's also about how she changed the way Egypt interacted with the world. She showed that diplomacy and trade can be as powerful as war. Finally, point 5, the difference in products. Think about all the famous Egyptian pharaohs you've heard of. Strong warriors, right? Men like Thutmose III or Ramses II. Their stories often involve battles and conquests. But Hatshepsut, that's a different story. Her story isn't mainly about military victories. Instead, her name echoes through history because of her wealth, the stability of her kingdom, and the amazing construction projects she started. Most historians agree that she was one of the greatest builders of her time. Her building projects weren't just grand and beautiful. They also served a purpose. They provided jobs for many people and contributed to the prosperity of Egypt. And there you have it, 5 incredible aspects of Hatshepsut's reign that have left an indelible mark on history. From her focus on prosperity and trade to her groundbreaking building projects and diplomatic endeavors, Hatshepsut has proven that female leaders can achieve greatness in male-dominated societies. But now we want to hear from you. Which of Hatshepsut's accomplishments resonated with you the most? Part 5. Mystery. Why was Hatshepsut erased from history? If Hatshepsut's achievements were as brilliant as her disappearance from the memory of posterity, it was as dark as the way she disappeared from the memory of posterity. A pharaoh who reigned for more than 20 years left behind a legendary step temple, a prosperous trade network across the Red Sea, an unprecedented building boom in Egypt, yet, thousands of years later, people hardly knew she ever existed. It was not until the 19th century, when archaeologists first entered Deir el-Bahari, that they discovered traces of chiseling, broken stele, and strange carvings in which the pharaoh's face was smashed. And from here, one of the greatest mysteries of Egyptian history began. Who wanted to erase Hatshepsut's name? And why? Her crimes in stone, archaeological evidence shows that Hatshepsut's name was engraved on many buildings, stele, and monuments. But after her death, many of her names and images were erased and replaced with those of other male pharaohs, most notably Thutmose III, her successor. In the Karnak temple, many of her statues were buried or broken. In Deir el-Bahari, the famous Punt expedition was also partially destroyed. It seems that someone launched a systematic, years-long campaign to erase all traces of her existence. Who was the culprit? The most popular theory is that Thutmose III, the young king she had usurped for 20 years, took revenge after he officially ascended the throne. According to the official version, Hatshepsut died before Thutmose III came of age, and he took over as pharaoh at a very young age, under the regency of his grandmother, Queen Taharite. However, recent research suggests that Thutmose III was actually a teenager when he shared the throne with Hatshepsut and acted as co-regent for 5 years. And when Hatshepsut died, Thutmose III was already an adult. He was no longer a young boy. So who was it? An ambitious young man, growing up in the oversized shadow of a powerful woman, always being called the real Pharaoh, while he was just a puppet. Could he swallow that humiliation? No. And the way to assert his power for posterity was to erase Hatshepsut. This assumption is supported by the fact that in some places, the erasure was minimal, just replacing Hatshepsut's name with Thutmose's. At others, however, it was relentless, smashing her face into fragments. And we know that Thutmose III came into power around 1479 BC. However, there is another detail. In the reign of Thutmose III, there was a building boom in Egypt. He built temples, palaces, and gardens. And we can find traces of his activity throughout the country. The problem is that these activities would have started right after Hatshepsut's death. But if the erasure campaign was orchestrated by Thutmose III himself, why didn't he start destroying the monuments built by Hatshepsut in the first years of his reign? In fact, he did. But then he stopped. Did he change his mind, or did he simply forget about the campaign? After all, he reigned for more than 50 years, which is a long time. But there is another fact that makes us think that Thutmose III alone cannot explain the erasure campaign. His successors continued to build on the work done by Hatshepsut. Amenhotep II, for example, continued his mother's building projects in Karnak, even though he was born after Hatshepsut's death. So it's likely that Amenhotep II did not share his father's hatred towards her. And if Thutmose III really couldn't stand Hatshepsut, why would he leave his son such a big mess? He would have taken care to erase everything related to Hatshepsut during his reign, so that the next pharaoh would not have any doubts about his legitimacy. Another interesting fact is that the erasure campaign only affected Hatshepsut. Other female pharaohs, such as Nefertiti or Cleopatra, were never persecuted in this way. Their names remained on the stelae and monuments, sometimes alongside male pharaohs. So what's so special about Hatshepsut? One answer is that she was the first female pharaoh in Egyptian history. The idea of a woman ruling Egypt must have shocked the ancient Egyptians, and this shock would have been felt long after Hatshepsut's death. There is also another hypothesis. Hatshepsut's erasure may not have been solely due to political enmity, but also a matter of principle. In Egyptian cosmology, Pharaoh was the male incarnation of the god Horus. Hatshepsut, a woman, broke the rules by taking on this title. To allow her to remain in memory would mean accepting that a woman could be on par with male pharaohs. For future generations, this would be a dangerous precedent, an insult to the religious political order of Egypt. Erasing her name, therefore, was not only revenge, but also a restoration of the order that had been disrupted. And who better to lead this campaign than the priests of Amun? They always kept a close eye on the religious and political situation in Egypt. Even today, we do not know exactly how Hatshepsut seized power, but it must have been something big. The priests loved it when a pharaoh promoted their cult, but hated it when he or she went too far. Remember, Hatshepsut used the figure of Amun to legitimize her reign, calling herself his daughter and saying that she inherited the divine right to rule Egypt from him. But soon she became too powerful, overshadowing even the priests of Amun. Once the priests realized that Hatshepsut was becoming too big for their liking, they switched sides and abandoned her. In conclusion, the erasure of Hatshepsut's name remains an enigma, a mysterious phenomenon that we cannot fully understand. Some scholars believe that it happened gradually over several centuries, involving multiple perpetrators. Others argue that it was the work of a single individual or dynasty. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. But one thing is certain: it was not a random or isolated event, but a deliberate and systematic campaign aimed at erasing Hatshepsut's name from the memory of posterity. Why? Perhaps it was a combination of factors: political, religious, and personal. Perhaps Thutmose III wanted to assert his power and restore the traditional order of things. Perhaps the priests of Amun wanted to limit the influence of a pharaoh who had become too powerful. Whatever the reason, the erasure campaign succeeded for many centuries. Hatshepsut became a forgotten shadow in the vast pantheon of ancient Egyptian history. Only a few scholars knew her name, and even fewer had seen her monuments. But in 1826, when the French Egyptologist Jean-Francois Champollion deciphered the Rosetta Stone, the first rays of light fell on the forgotten pharaoh. Her story is now known all over the world, but who knows? Maybe that was not what those who erased her name wanted. If Hatshepsut's career was as bright as the sun, her fate was shrouded in a thick darkness. When her name was erased from the stone stele, we thought that history had cut off all traces. But paradoxically, the more people tried to erase it, the more mysterious gaps were left, making later archaeologists passionately fill in. And the most haunting question is, where is Hatshepsut's real body? Before we get started, please click on the like button to inspire us. Part 6. Tomb KV-20, The Origin of the Labyrinth. The first tomb associated with Hatshepsut is KV-20, one of the oldest tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Unlike many other pharaohs who chose a straight path, KV-20 is a spiral maze, dug deep into the mountain with a corridor that extends for more than 200 meters. KV-20 was originally built for her father, Thutmose I, but after Hatshepsut ascended the throne, she expanded it to become a communal tomb. Inside the tomb, people found huge, intricately carved stone sarcophagi bearing her name. However, what surprised archaeologists was they were empty. There was no mummy inside. The question is, was she never buried here? Or was she but was moved later? The confusion of the secondary tombs. In addition to KV-20, there is KV-60, a small, remote, unadorned tomb discovered by Howard Carter, who later became famous for the tomb of Tutankhamun. In KV-60, there are two female mummies. One is identified as Hatshepsut's wet nurse, with an inscription on the sarcophagus. The other body, a fat, middle-aged woman with no label, was left as if no one cared. Howard Carter then ignored it. He only took the body of his wet nurse out of the tomb, leaving the other body to lie there for nearly 100 years. It is hard to believe. One of Egypt's greatest pharaohs was once considered an unknown mummy. Theories surrounding the disappearance. Throughout the 20th century, Egyptologists have put forward many theories. Removed secretly, perhaps her enemies took her body out of the tomb, buried her in a less dignified place to humiliate her. Protected from tomb robbers. Some scholars believe that the priests themselves moved her body, hiding it in a secondary tomb to avoid robbers, because KV-20 was too vulnerable to prying eyes. Destroyed. It is possible that she was destroyed as part of a campaign to erase her name, but the discovery of numerous coffins and boxes of organs bearing her name belies this theory. Each theory contradicts itself, creating a confusing picture and adding to Hatshepsut's mystery. 21st century investigation. Unmasking technology. In 2007, under the leadership of Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt launched a large-scale survey campaign using modern technology. It was like an ancient version of CSI. CT scans, DNA dental tests, all were mobilized. CT scans helped to examine every detail of the body, detect diseases, age, skull shape. DNA to compare with other royal mummies, especially Thutmose I, her father, and Thutmose II, her husband. Canopic box. In the Cairo Museum archives, they found a wooden box with Hatshepsut's name engraved on it, inside which was a broken tooth. When they compared this tooth to the fat female mummy in KV-60, they found a perfect match. The remaining tooth in the jaw matched the tooth in the box. It was like a puzzle piece had finally fallen into place. Hatshepsut's late portrait. CT scans revealed that Hatshepsut was not the healthy woman she appeared to be. She was overweight, had signs of osteoporosis, and was likely to have type 2 diabetes. In particular, she had bone cancer in her hips and spine, a disease that could have killed her when she was around 50 years old. More surprisingly, the mummy had traces of cosmetics or topical medications containing aromatic hydrocarbons, substances that we now know cause cancer. In other words, it may have been the ancient remedies she believed in that hastened her death. From pharaoh to forgotten mummy. Imagine this paradox. A female pharaoh who built immortal structures, who was once revered as a deity, ended her life in a small, nameless tomb, without a coffin, without burial objects. Death took the body, and politics took the name. Without modern technology, she would have remained an anonymous mummy, forgotten under the desert dust. Part 7. A resurrection after 3,000 years. When the results were announced, the world was stunned. The unknown woman KV-60 was Pharaoh Hatshepsut. After more than 3,000 years of obliteration, she was called by her real name again. Ironically, it is the obliteration of her identity that makes her one of the most fascinating figures in Egyptology. Without that investigation, Hatshepsut might have been buried in oblivion, like dozens of other pharaohs. But because she was deliberately hidden, her story is more fascinating, more dramatic, and more immortal. More than 3,000 years have passed since Hatshepsut's death, but her name still resonates in debates, museums, and the imaginations of those who are passionate about ancient Egypt. From a figure once deliberately erased from history, Hatshepsut has become one of the most famous pharaohs, on par with Tutankhamun or Cleopatra in popular culture. However, what makes her special is not only the rarity of a female pharaoh, but also the way she left a legacy that transcends the framework of her time. The Yair el-Bahari temple still stands after thousands of years, becoming one of the most impressive remaining structures in Egypt. Tourists from all over come to Luxor, not only to admire the limestone architecture, but also to exclaim, "How could a woman leave such a majestic legacy?" In addition, the trade routes she opened, especially her voyage to Punt, showed that she was not just a powerful decorative pharaoh, but a great politician, economist, and strategist. Today, Egyptologists regard Hatshepsut as one of the most influential pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. Ironically, if not for Thutmose III's campaign to erase her name, she would probably have been remembered as a fairly successful ruler during a prosperous period. But it was precisely this forbidden memory that made her a hot topic. Each buried statue, each erased inscription, added to her mystery. She became a historical ghost. The more she was denied, the more she lived in memory. In the contemporary perspective, Hatshepsut was not just a female pharaoh. She has been turned into a feminist icon, mentioned in research papers, books, and documentaries, as proof that even in an ancient civilization, women could hold supreme power. Many scholars call her the first woman to challenge gender stereotypes. Others are more cautious, arguing that her cross-dressing was not a gender liberation, but a clever political tactic. Either way, Hatshepsut's name has inspired conversations about gender, power, and leadership. In films, novels, and even video games, Hatshepsut often appears as a half-real, half-mythical figure. People fictionalize her as a mysterious and beautiful queen, perhaps a lover, perhaps a strategist, or even a challenger to the gods. This may be far from historical reality, but it also shows the endless appeal of her story. Hatshepsut is like a mirror. Each era sees a different image, in keeping with its own obsessions and desires. There is an interesting paradox. Those who tried to erase Hatshepsut's name probably believed that they would succeed, that her memory would fade into the dust. But history proves the opposite. The very act of erasure made posterity even more eager to find the truth. She was no longer an ordinary pharaoh in the long list of Egyptian kings, but one of the few names that aroused the curiosity of the modern world. Today, when standing in front of the Deir el-Bahari temple, looking up at the white stone steps leading up, one sees not only the work of a pharaoh, but also a symbol of an aspiration beyond limits. Hatshepsut did not fight with swords. She fought with her very existence in the ultimate role. And that victory, though hidden for thousands of years, eventually resounded in human history. There are names in history that are engraved in gold, but then fade away over time. And there are also names that were intentionally erased, but still live persistently in the human imagination. Hatshepsut is a strange testament to this paradox. She lived in a glorious time, wearing men's ceremonial clothes to affirm that power has no gender. She built temples as white as the sun, opened trade routes that brought Egypt to prosperity. Then she also left in silence, without trumpets, without great funerals recorded. And then history tried to erase her, tried to make her never exist. However, like the desert keeps footprints in the sand, the past never disappears completely. 3,000 years later, we can still read her name, still see her statue, still hear the echoes from the stone steps of Deir el-Bahari Temple. Every broken statue, every scratched line, becomes evidence of the fact that there was a woman who once defied prejudice and once sat on the throne of the pharaohs. Maybe Hatshepsut did not think of herself as a symbol. Maybe she simply wanted to protect the throne for her bloodline, to rule the country in peace. But whatever her original intention, her legacy has transcended time, transcended political calculations, to become a story for millions to ponder. And when we listen to that story in the quiet of the night, her image appears not just as the shadow of a pharaoh, but as a gentle reminder that even the seemingly impossible can happen, that even when one's name is erased, one can still exist in the memory of humanity. Let's continue our journey back in time to ancient Egypt, where the secrets of the past come alive. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of the pyramids and explore the lives of the pharaohs. Your adventure awaits. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates. Let the spirit of exploration guide you. May the wisdom of the ages illuminate your path. And remember, the sands of time hold the secrets of eternity.